Today's topic is how to recruit a contracts manager for high stake projects, say above 100 million. See, I have got some recent calls and requests from the side of management how we can do this because we are finding difficulties in finding screening the contract managers based on their high stake capacity. So let's see that what are the mandatory requirements and what are good to have requirements and what are the red flags that you should see while recruiting a contracts manager. So, so why this role is very critical. High value projects is equal to high exposure to claims, disputes, and commercial leakage. When you see a contractor or an employer, they run business. In businesses, management focus on two things: cash in and cash out. And in cash in and cash out, a major role is played by the contracts administrators or contracts managers or commercial directors. They control the profit margins, they control the liabilities in cash outs. So increasing complexity where multiple parties are involved, multiple jurisdictions are involved, international parties are involved, and large complex EPC projects, FIDIC-based contracts are involved. There, this role becomes very critical. And poor contract management directly impacts the EBITDA of the company. The objective is to hire a contracts manager who can protect the margin, control the risk, and drive the claims recovery in a smooth process. So, definition of a high stake project. So, we have been telling us a high stake project. So, what is a high stake project? A project value of more than 100 million. It must have a complex contract models, even though it's below 100 million. If it's very complex contracting model structure, then it will be a high stake project. It might be EPC, design build or triple P, like multi-jurisdictional cross-border executions, high claim probabilities. When you are not clear with your design, when you are not clear with your scope, then it ends up in variations, delays, and disruptions. So tight timelines. When you are going for very landmark projects, the timelines will be non-negotiable. Even if the budget is very high, you can play with the budget, but the timelines are non-negotiable. In such cases, the LD exposures will be very high. Not just LD exposures. Beyond the LD, it affects the reputations, it affects the public interests. So that is where it has to be taken seriously as a high stake project. Role expectations. What is the reality with the job description? You might have seen a typical job description asking for should have experience in contracts management, should review the agreement, should have exposure to FIDIC, should have exposure to international contracts. They should support the project team in making the estimations, making the claims. But what is the actual requirement? The actual requirement is the candidate must be a commercial strategist. He should drive the entire claim process. He should mitigate the risks that others cannot foresee. He should be a negotiation skiller with the clients, with subcontractors, even within the company. He should be a negotiation specialist. See, a contracts administrator is the most trained diplomat in a project team when compared to the project manager or other quality managers or other directors. And he should be a dispute avoidance leader to maintain a very smooth relationship. So, what are the core competencies? So, contractual mastery is non-negotiable. That is the very first skill that is required. You should have exposure to international contracts like FIDIC and should have exposure to EPC turnaround contracts from oil and gas industries. They don't usually use FIDIC contracts, oil and gas projects, and variation in claims mechanisms. Second is the next level, which is the claims and dispute resolution. They should have an exposure to EOT, prolongation, disruption claims. I have seen contracts administrators who doesn't know the difference between a delay and a claim and a disruption claim. They'll be managing 500 million or a billion size over contracts. So what are the contemporary record strategies? And should have a knowledge about arbitration and arbitration supports and contemporary records record in arbitration. Commercial acumen. So end of the day, we are running a business. The commercial knowledge is very important for a contracts administrator. You can't just behave like a lawyer, or you can't just behave like a complete contracts a guy who only speaks about liability or contract classes. You have to speak about cash flow. You have to speak about how we are going to bring in profits. So cost versus entitlement alignment, revenue leakage preventions, margin protection. That's why we say that contracts manager should have a cost management expression. Risk management. Yes, contract is a risk allocation mechanism. So contract management is directly risk allocation, a risk management mechanism. So you have to identify the early risk identifications. Contractual mitigation strategies must be there for uh, the high risk classes. And from your experience, you know that what are the classes will end up in disputes. Negotiation capability. So employer and subcontractor negotiations, back-to-back contract alignments should be there. Ideal candidates profile. So let's see what is ideal candidate profile. The experience must be from 10 to 18 years and not more than that or not below that. Minimum 5 years claim exposure should be there. Claim exposure is not that petty claims. You should have a large, huge amount of claims, especially EOD claims and prolongation claims. Industry, they must be from EPC background, oil and gas, infrastructure, and power background. Exposure to international contracts, especially multi-jurisdictions. Proven track record in the claims recovery. See, the industry is very small. If someone says we have made a claim and we have recovered, that is easily back verifiable because the circle is very small. And at the top, you contracts managers, contract administrators know each other, and the management know each other because there's a small industry and everybody knows that. Even though we say that it is a $13 trillion industry, but it's run by very few management people and they know each other. Red flag is never hire a pure document reviewer or a contract drafter with no site or claim exposure. Must have versus good to have skills. Must have non-negotiable skills are claim preparation and defense, delay analysis, understanding. I've seen most US background people doesn't have a proper understanding of delay analysis. And people from planning background, they have a good understanding of delay analysis, but they don't have the understanding of contractually how they can claim that. So a pure technical analysis doesn't help, and a pure contract knowledge doesn't help. You should have a blend of both. The contract interpretation, especially in international contracts, and stakeholder negotiations are very important. Negotiations doesn't come naturally. You should have both training as well as you should have both experience. The blend of both only will give you the negotiation strategies. So what are good to have? So good to have is arbitration exposures, quantum analysis exposure. They might have a legal background. Either they should have a business law background or construction law background will be good. Not necessarily they have to be lawyers. Experience in big contractors and consultants. So sourcing strategy, where to find them? So now it is in very modern world, we can find them very easily. You can find them from the competitors, EPC contractor, claims consultancy firms, arbitrations or dispute advisory firms. Secondary channels is there are now LinkedIn is available with niche communities, followed by QS planners, contract specialists, and there are WhatsApp groups where the niche we have certain WhatsApp groups and we get uh, requests from HRs to post their job posts to get them hired. But definitely we verify the back verify and do these jobs because you have to avoid generic job portals without filtering, then you will be end up in fake profiles, and that will put a question mark on the company's profit, EBITDA, whatever we discussed. So screening framework, there should be 3 levels of screening. First is the CV screening. You have to check the project size, role clarity, claim exposures, reject vague contract support profiles. Technical screening should be there. Explain a claim you successfully recovered. How did you handle EOD rejection? And what clauses do you rely on? See, these questions are they may look very generic, but answers or theoretical or practical, we can find it very easily. Only People with real experience will give a practical answer for how did you handle the EOD rejections. People with theoretical answers will give a theoretical response which is easily identifiable. So level 3 is a strategic interview. This is usually on high-level management interview. That is scenario-based commercial decisions. Like you have more number of claims and you are in a situation to leave some of them. How will you take strategy and how the negotiation plays an important role. See, negotiation is the most underrated skill in contracts management. So I force or I educate companies to use to train the employees for negotiations. That will have a big impact on the project for sure. Case-based interview approach. So definitely there should be a case-based interview approach that you have to give a case like, for example, the client delays the site access for 12 months. So what will be your response? And the contractor claims the prolongation cost for this. What are the hurdles we face? And whether we are eligible for a prolongation cost for a particular kind of delay. So evaluate the candidate on the clause identification. So what are the clauses he identified for a particular delay? Whether he just depends on EOD clause or he just depends on variation clause or he's just going beyond that with the other employee risk event driven classes and what are their direct consequences. So whether he is strategically speaking about the notice, time bar classes, evidences or substantiations and negotiations, what will be the commercial positioning and what is the risk versus the reward thinking. So what is the risk we are going to take and what is the reward we are going to get, whether the risk is worth taking for the reward we are going to take. So that is more important in claims. So practical test. So take a scenario which you have already gone through in your company from your lessons learned register and ask the question with a delay scenario or a variation scenario and ask them to draft a claim approach. Just draft. So while drafting itself, you can understand whether he's linking the cause and effect and whether the effect is backed up with the substantiation and the substantiation is backed up with the entitlement. So that chain itself will give whether they are capable of drafting a claim or whether they physically understand what a claim and how a claim works under contract. And even though it goes to arbitration, it stands strong. So this will definitely easily identify the theoretical knowledge people from the real practitioners. Behavioral indicators, which are very, very important, more than important than the technical requirements. So whether they should have the ownership mindset, they should not keep blaming the other departments or other stakeholders or pushing back it on the other stakeholder. He should own the problem and solve it by his own. Commercial aggression with a balanced logic. See, commercially, we have to be very agitated because the businesses are entirely depend on cash flows, especially in construction area. So, how confident you are in conflict situations? What is the ability to challenge the senior stakeholders? You might be working with someone which is double than your age or your experience, and they are sitting in the client position and they are very dominating. How you will handle them? So try to avoid the passive personalities and overly legalistic mindset people without any commercial sense. Compensation strategy. So it's a benchmark against claim consultants and EPC leaders. It should include fixed plus performance bonus. So that will motivate them to perform low. So if they are going for a claim, there should be a special bonus other than the salaries or the fixed things. And incentives linked to claim recovery or savings. So top candidates are driven by the impact, authority, and exposure, not just salary. So above this, there are certain layers which has to be non-compromised to retain a high intelligent or high performance contract administrators. So what are the common hiring mistakes being done? The hiring lawyers with no project exposure, that's the biggest blunder you can do. And hiring or QS or planners without the contract. The QS will not have a contract will not have a planning exposure, and planners will not have a PS exposure. Overvaluing certifications versus real claim experience. So ignoring negotiation ability. Negotiation ability, I don't think it's not tested anywhere in world in any interviews. And no practical testing. Practical testings are very important, and just don't get just carried away by the resume. Just test them practically with the practical scenarios. And you know that we speak something on board, and within rooms, you know what is the reality. So within boardrooms or within interview rooms, the actual scenario of the industry gets exchanged. So what are the success metric post hiring KPI? So here we are given a very small area, but we have given videos explaining the KPIs of a contracts manager or a contracts commercial director. So claim recovery rate, we are just giving the definitions, not the actual KPI to be measured. EOT success ratio, reduction in dispute escalations, margin protections, variation approvals, turnover time. If you're a contracts manager, you should have all these KPIs measurement in your dashboard. So only then you go for a promotion or you go for a negotiation with your management, and this will help you to go to the next stage. So what is the final recommendation? Focus on battle tested professionals, not theoretical experts. Prioritize claims. See, you are hiring a contracts administrator to run the projects, to run the business, to make profits, to make claims. You are not hiring someone to just handle conflicts and create conflicts. So that's very important. And prioritize claims plus negotiation experience. Use case-based evaluations, not interviews alone. Treat hiring as a risk mitigation investment, not a HR activity. So in high-stake projects, a contracts manager is not a support function. They are the difference between the profit and discipline. So thanks for watching this video. And if you liked it, please leave a comment and like it. If you want any other topics to be discussed, please drop in the comment. Thanks for watching. Take care. Bye.